This is the second round I'm playing against the Stockfish computer queen-versus-rook endgame. I'm going to bring my king closer to the center, and then I'm going to try to force the black king to be out toward the edge. Let's see what is recommended. Rook to c4 for the Stockfish. I'm going to get closer here. Now there's no check available for black that would be reasonable. Let's see what Stockfish recommends. c7. And bring my king a little closer. Stockfish now recommends c5. I think I'm going to push the king out of the center here. Queen to d4. Stockfish recommends king to c6, of course, not to give up the rook. Now, that looks good at first. Now I'm finding that I don't have so many good moves here. I'm going to move my queen up here. Stockfish has some recommendations, including king to b5. Why I would want the king to be way out there. I think it's not calculating enough. I think that the best for is king to d5. Now I have a square here, right between the two kings, which is a square that's controlled by the queen and the king. That's an advantage. Let's see what Stockfish recommends. c6. Check here, driving the king forward. Now I'm repeating this position. Recommended is king to e7, which is generally good to have the defending king and the rook let a knights move away from each other. And here I'm going to attack this rook. It can give one check, and one of the recommendations is d6. Which I'm going to just reply to, bringing my king up here. Reasonable to put the rook on c6. That's one of the recommendations the Stockfish gives. Now, I want to drive the king to the edge of the board, so I'm just going to give a check here. Stockfish is going to move the king back. Now this is what's called a third rank defense. This is a very hard nut to crack if you're even a grandmaster and are not acquainted with the details in this. The point is, I need to find a way to get my queen to control one of these two squares, d8 or e8, either the one the king's on or the one right to the left of the black king here. I'm going to start by attacking this rook. And of course, the best move for black is either to do a distant defense down on something like c1, or to try to maintain the third rank defense with rook to g6, which we'll look at here. Okay, now I need to have my queen taking a position where it's on the 7th rank. It's protecting one of these center squares of this rank, the 8th rank. So the king can't just go back and forth on the two squares d8 and e8. According to this Stockfish, the best that can be done for the defense now is to move king to f8. It says mate in 19. Now here's the thing, this forces the abandonment of the third rank defense, I believe. See what Stockfish mentions here. This is rook to g3. Now the situation is I need to make checks. I'm not going to look to see the Stockfish recommendations because I'm doing this on my own. If I move queen to d8, the king can just move up to f7, and I don't see what's accomplished by that. I need to find a place for this queen to go where it can block the checks that black can have. Several ways I can do that. It's good generally in this position where the defending king and the defending rook are farther apart, is to get the queen between that defending king and the black rook. The check is usually the way, because it can prevent the rook from making a check on my king. Check. Now I'm covering these two squares at the moment, which is not important. It's black's turn. And recommended by Stockfish is king to e8, or king to g7. It computes is better. Longer till checkmate. So I now need to find a way to get my king closer. I'm going to try to drive the king back, I think. Get the queen on this diagonal. Check. Force it back. Not giving an opportunity for the rook to come to get back with the king. Stockfish recommends king to g8. It allows my king to get closer, I believe, to the point where 20 seconds or so of Stockfish calculations, it says rook to g7 is best, bringing the rook and king back together again. I don't think there's much I can do to prevent that. I need to get I can get into a position which is called a thorn. A thorn is a position we're about to get to where my king comes here and my king and queen are both protecting a square on the diagonal, one square away from the defending king. See what is recommended. Let's do the one that Stockfish recommends as well. Delayed checkmate, the longest. Rook to a7. How do we handle this? I think best here is to bring my queen to g4, where it has a square here available. And I'll be covering a checking square. Here's what I mean. I move here, check. And I can come here next, which will cover this square, which means my king will come forward from a check. See what Stockfish recommends. King f8. Okay. What I have here is an opportunity to get my queen between the defending king and the rook. Well, the one on the top is king to g7. We can look at that one. Nothing really that black can do with a check. Of course, the rook can be reunited with the king. Let's see what Stockfish recommends. Still doing some calculations here. Notice that my queen here, I placed it here so that this rook cannot make a check here when my king advances. So now black does not have a reasonable check. Let's do that one. Rook to f7. Now they're reunited again. That could happen. So I think the best choice would be to make a check, which is only one reasonable check here. Queen to c3. Now Stockfish recommends king to g8. We'll go with king to g8. I still have plenty of moves left. We've only made, 24 moves or so. Yes, I'm going to come here. The rook comes here. Rook to g7. I think I want to get something close to a Philidor by moving my queen here, forcing the king to the h7 square. I like my chances here getting close to a Philidor. Figures that that's the best move. Rook to g6 check. It allows my king to get into a thorn position here. Well, Stockfish recommends r to g1. Let's go to r to g1. That's at the top of the Stockfish list. Queen in a discovered check position. In other words, this allows the rook to come here to make a check. But see what Stockfish recommends now. As my king moves, then it will be check on the black king. It recommends king to g8. And notice I'm going to move queen to a8. I'm right next to the forking square a7. And what can the black king do except with my mouse here. King to h7. Queen to a7 check. Oh no! I've miscalculated that. This is not the Philidor position. I messed up badly there. I need to get my queen on the diagonal here that can lead to a Philidor. Stockfish recommends rf7. I need to attack the rook, and it can't defend it with king g6 because the rook would be lost. So Stockfish recommends r to c7, which is interesting. Come back to the king and getting out of check. Going to go to this other center square, keeping an eye on these two forking squares, meaning that black really, I'm sure it has to go to a white colored square. rg8 is recommended. I'm sorry, king g8. I think this is best. So moving the queen here, preparing a discovered check. The rook moves to f7. Okay, this is a diagonal position. I know the theory behind this. The queen just moves back one square, and then black has a problem. And the computer figures, it doesn't know these patterns, it just knows calculation. Rook to g7. Okay, now we're getting into Philidor territory here. I move king to f6 check, king to h7. By the way, I'm getting very close to the 50 move rule here. Oh, I see a maneuver to the Philidor is very simple here. Check. And of course, king has to move here. Now I get into the Philidor. Now I know how to deal with this. And see how Stockfish recommends. I would guess Stockfish would recommend rg1, which it does. That's the best. But there's... I'm having trouble with my mouse here. Now, check. What does Stockfish recommend? King to h7. I want to look at this forking square here or a forking square here. Moving here. So Stockfish recommends king to g8. Now it's very simple. We've moved 42. It's kind of close to the 50 move rule, but you see now there's no interposition of the rook that does any real good. King has to move here. This wins the rook for sure. There is no... And this is the Philidor result of the Philidor. So now my king is in a position where the interposing doesn't work at all. King to g8. And now you notice when I capture the rook, it's with check. There's still plenty of moves. Move number 44. I win the game. It's checkmate very soon. So I got it that time with a few moves to spare.